Hi, this is Naufal from Note Solution. We'll be talking about long-run competitive equilibrium today, and we're going to be looking at a question of medium difficulty to still clarify our concepts. Now, this question is relating to costs in the particular industry and the long-run supply curve. So the question says, the long-run supply curve for a competitive industry, and then the first option is, may be horizontal if entry into the industry lowers average total cost. So it's saying maybe horizontal if the entry into the firm lowers average total cost. Now, if a firm comes into the market and each additional firm that comes into the market reduces the cost in the industry, so it's a decreasing cost industry, then that would basically mean that your long-run supply curve is going in this direction, or is downward sloping, just because each additional firm that comes in, or each additional increase in output will mean that you can supply at an even lower price just because your own cost is going to be going down. And so, for example, if you were over here and you had this price and quantity ratio, and then you came over here, then just because your own cost is going down because of the decreasing cost industry, you can actually supply at a cheaper price, and you can also increase quantity. And so a decreasing cost industry has a downward sloping long-run supply curve. And when it says in the question that the long-run supply curve for a competitive industry may be horizontal if entry into the firm lowers average total cost, that would be incorrect, since if each additional firm is actually lowering the cost, then you would experience a downward sloping long-run supply curve. So A can be the answer. Part B says may be upward sloping if higher cost firms enter the industry. Now let's examine that. So we now are in the increasing cost industry, so each additional firm that we get into the market actually adds to the cost or increases the cost. So that would mean that if we're producing at this point before and a couple firms get attracted into this particular industry, and so they increase the output up to over here, now the price is going to be going up, or going to be like a traditional supply curve. So the long-run supply curve will be upward sloping if there is, in fact, increasing costs, or we are in an increasing cost industry. So this seems to be correct. Part C says will be horizontal if there is free entry into the industry. Now remember, free entry and exit does not necessarily mean, it does not necessarily give us any idea about what the type of supply curve would be. So free entry, all of these firms have free entry and exit, but that doesn't really explain what type of cost structure there is or how the long-run supply curve will be shaping. So it's very important for us to actually know what type of industry we're dealing with, so long-run, constant, or increasing, before we can make the decision whether the long-run supply curve will be downward, upward, or horizontally sloping. And so since this part does not give us any clue as to whether it's going to be a decreasing, increasing, or constant cost industry, and all it says is that it's just there's just free entry and exit of firms, so we can't really make that distinction for part C. So that would be incorrect also. Part D says may be upward sloping if some resources are available only in limited quantities. Now, if some resources are available in limited quantities, that would mean that each time you produce something, it becomes more and more costlier, just because the factor that you're using to produce them is depleting or is decreasing. So for example, if you had a natural resource or that you use to produce your product, and each time you produced the resource depleted, and so that would mean it would be even more, you would sell it at an even more expensive rate just because of this scarcity of the factor. And so that would mean that you're in fact in an increasing cost industry, where each additional unit, due to the scarcity of this factor, means that you're going to be producing at a higher price, and you also have to get a higher price for that, of course. And so your long-run supply curve will be upward sloping. So D does seem to be correct also. And E says B and D are correct, and so that will be our answer, just because if there is free entry and exit, and if each additional firm is adding to the cost or is increasing the cost, or in fact if we have a scarce factor that's basically used in our production, they both will result in an upward sloping or positively sloped supply curve. Hence, E is our answer.